So this video is part of a breakdown series that I'm running on my Patreon, and on the Patreon you can find many more breakdowns like this, but also the project files that go with the video breakdowns. So if you want to learn a little bit extra and open a project file while you're looking at the breakdown, make sure to visit the Patreon, link is in the description, and I hope you can learn something from it. Stadium claps. Really give it that like atmospheric feel again. And together with the hardstyle kicks, that sounds like this. Like again, if you see my previous projects, you know that I like to add a sub bass instead of, or I like to add a sub bass in my basses or in my buildups. But here I decided to add a hardstyle kick. I started to use a lot of hardstyle sounds in general, but especially for this track, because you know the melody and the synths are also like super hardstyle inspired. I figured I just kind of wanted to go forward on that, so I added a hardstyle kick instead. And I think if I mix this thing properly, then all the bass should come from the hardstyle kick. So let's play it without. You can tell, like, if there's no bass in there, if the hardstyle kicks wouldn't be there, it would just sound really bland and really boring. Just adds a lot of energy and a lot of tension. Halfway into the build-up, I add this little neuro bass with a pass-by effects, and I think there's a vocal playing. Yeah, obviously. Just like again, the vocal stem is playing. Canceled the post-processing because it's the build-up. Didn't want to get things to get too messy. And this stem already came like this, like it came with processing and it came with the pitching, so all I just had to do was drag it in. I didn't have to pitch anything myself for that. And then we're going into the drop. This little war cry fill from the original. That's all I used, I think. It's just it's a nice little drum fill before the drop, so figured I'd add that in. And then we're going straight into the drop. We'll play it again real quick. So yeah, classic heavy dubstep drop, as we all love it. And again, like I said, there's so many groups inside groups. Like I have the bass group here, a bunch of effects that aren't even on right now, into another group with a little EQ, a clipper, more EQing, more soothe, blah blah blah. I can't give out the project file right now, but I think best I can do is just like when the remix does come out, and I'll give you the project file. I think it's easiest for you to like go into it yourself and like try and figure out the routing that I used here, because it's too much to go into right now. So yeah, let's just play these basses. One of my own basses that I gave away in my sample pack as well. So if you downloaded that, you have that. I use it in every single track. It's just like a 4 on the floor bass loop that I like to use. Couple more layers, like a samplifier loop. Both a bunch of post-processing, like an OTT, another soothe. I chopped it up a little bit to make it follow the flow. The super like high-pitched processing that I started using ever since my last EP. It just gives a lot of top end and a lot of stereo to it. Because as you can tell, like this main bass is super mono. It's super like heavy on the mids, not a lot of side information. So what I like to do is just layer it with a bunch of like higher pitched basses that do carry a lot of stereo information. So yeah, instead of just like giving stereo to everything, I just like to build things up. So I have like a mono layer, and then I'll add a stereo layer on top. So at the end of the day, like the second I play my song in mono, it'll still sound good. It'll still sound heavy. Because if you make everything stereo, it'll phase out and all of the energy just gets lost. So instead of like trying to make everything stereo, I just recommend build it up. Have like a mono layer and then add another layer on top that's more stereo. More basses. Little crank that bass shot and accompany bass shot. Little serum boy. Bunch of muted layers that are probably resampled. Yeah. Sustain bass. I'll show you the patch real quick. Looks like this. Just made it from scratch real quick. They're not really hard to make, so there's that. And for the processing, I started with just this single layer. And all that's doing is just it's pitching a little bit with the frequency shifter. There is an EQ and an OTT. But when I was working on the song more, I felt that this sustain bass needed more it needed more energy. It just sounded really boring. It sounded really flat. So what I did is I created this audio effect rack and I added a second chain. So it's playing the same sounds, but instead of these effects, I added these effects instead. And like I said, for my most basses, I like to have a mono layer and I like to have a stereo layer. So the second layer sounds like this. Super high pitched, a lot of stereo information. So instead of like trying to make the main sound really stereo wide, I just add another layer and I pitch it, I distort it so that you can't really tell that it's the same sound anymore. And I just add the stereo information to that. So together that sounds like this. Like you can tell that's doing a lot, and especially in like at the final end of the mix, you can tell. Like if I play the drop without the sustain or like the high pitch sustain, it sounds like this. Versus this. You can just tell that it's missing. So I really encourage you guys to start doing this as well. Just like start layering the same sound, but post-process it. Like to go into it real quick, I pitched it up 12 semitones, added more chorus, added an isotope trash, with just like a little like preset, I think. Actually, I don't even think I used anything on it. Like more frequency shifting, EQing, OTT, just distort it, make it really wide again. And then when you layer it together, it sounds great. With this Joe B bass. Again, really wide, really high pitched. Add more of that stereo. Then we're coming into this little like fill, I guess. Yeah, it's not too much going on here. Just a kick. Kind of having the rhythm here. Little drum fill. And I bring back the hardstyle kicks. So yeah, let's just do those. So pitch that, and then together with the rest of the basses, that sounds like this. Not like a crazy feel. I just changed up the rhythm a little bit and add a couple extra sounds. Second part of the drop, it's the exact same as the first one, but the only change I made was on the sustain bass. I think. Yeah, so like here, it's pitching up and then down. But for the second part, I just like to pitch it up straight. Like it's the exact same. It's a little bit of variation though, like to keep it going. Because if you play the same 32 bars or 16 bar drop in this case, it gets really boring. So you just want to make sure that every 8 bars something changes. And like that being said, I add these basses as well. They're not really changing like the whole motif of the song. They're just adding a little bits of like bass sounds to the sides. So if you'll play the track without them, you'll notice that something is missing. So just make it a little bit more interesting by adding a couple extra things. Then we have this little group going on with a bunch of like background layers. And these, like, none of these have basses in them or like bass frequencies in them. Like they're all just high pitched, more in the back of the mix sounds. But you'll notice that if I play the drop without, it'll sound really empty. So I'll play it without right now.